Jai Ho.
Jai Ho.
All glories to the ISKCON devotees of SanDiego.
Haribol.
Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Sangsara Davanala Lida Loka Tranaya Karunya Ghana Ghanatvam Praptasya Kalpiyana Gunarnavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nritya Gita Vaditra Madhyan Manaso Sena Romanchakam Pasrutaranga Pajo Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Shri Vigraha Radhana Nityanana Shringara Tanman Giramarjanado Yuktasya Bhaktangs Chanayunjatopi Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Chaturvidha Sri Bhagavat Prasada Swadvan Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangan Kritvaiva Tripting Bhajataksa Daiva Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Shri Radhika Madhava Yora Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Pratikshanaspādana Lolupasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Nikunjayuno Roti Keli Siddhyai Yaya Livi Yukti Apikshaniya Tatrati Dakshad Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Sakshadharitvena Samasta Shastrai Uktastathabhav Yata Eva Sadabi Kintu Prabhoya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado Yasya prasadan nagati kutopi Dayans tuangs tasyaya shastri sandhyam Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. 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 Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Godavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Desha Tarine Om Ajnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajacharya Astotra Satyasrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Yamuna Devi Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Trinadapi Sunichena Turadiva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Kevalam. Kalo nastyeva nastyeva, nastyeva gatiranyata. I want to thank Balaram Dasa for giving me this opportunity and giving me this privilege to speak on Guru Tattva for the devotees of ISKCON SanDiego. May Krishna bless Balaram Das more and more. So, I have selected some excerpts from the Srimad Bhagavatam, since it was Balaram Dasa who instructed me to speak on Guru Tattva. So before we begin, we will chant the famous 12-syllable mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So our first excerpt is from the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The incident is the pastime of Vitra Asura, and it's several chapters. And there is one incident where the demigods are approaching Vishvarupa to act as their chief priest in performing a sacrifice. So it is said here, although Vishvarup was inferior to the demigods accepted him as their guru in order to conquer the demons.
Can you do me a favor?
Acharyo Brahmano Murti,
My
the teacher or spiritual
the
master
bottle will do.
who instructs Vedic knowledge by his personal behavior, is the personification of all the Vedas. So this is the first point here. How to understand the spiritual master. Number one, the spiritual master instructs Vedic knowledge. And he does this not only through precepts, but by his personal behavior. And thus, he is the personification of all the Vedas. Our next excerpt is from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Prahlad Maharaj, the 5-year-old boy, is explaining to his classmates what he learned in the womb. When he was in the womb of his mother, Narada Muni instructed him. So they wanted to know what he learned. And so one of the things he said, one must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master. And in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord. One should hear the glories of the Lord with faith. One should glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord. One should always meditate upon the Lord's lotus feet. And one should worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastra and Guru. Now, later on in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is instructing King Yudhishthira on many different subjects. So towards the end of his instructions, Narada says this, "My dear King Yudhishthira, one must conquer the modes of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. And then one must become detached from the mode of goodness by promoting oneself to the platform of Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. And all of this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion." So this teaching of Narada Muni is so appropriate for all of us. Simply by this one activity of engaging in the service of the spiritual master, everything will be accomplished according to one's spiritual desires. Simple program. Narada continues, and in this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of nature. My dear King Yudhishthir, the spiritual master should be considered to be directly the Supreme Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge for enlightenment. So that we just sang. I sang the Gurvashtakam prayers, and I sang the 7th shloka, Sakshad Haritvena Nasamasta Shastrai, that according to the Vedanta, the spiritual master is the external manifestation of Hari. Hari is in your heart, Krishna. And he manifests himself externally as the spiritual master. So, Sakshad Haritvena, the spiritual master, is as good as contacting God directly. Consequently, Narada says, for one who maintains the material conception that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, everything is frustrated. One's enlightenment and Vedic studies and knowledge are like the bathing of an elephant. This analogy of the bathing of the elephant, Prabhupada explains. The elephant goes and takes a bath in the lake or the river, but immediately coming out, the elephant puts dust all over its body again because it finds it uncomfortable to be clean. So he takes a bath and then immediately throws dust over himself. So that is not intelligent. So the spiritual master has to be accepted as the external manifestation of Krishna in the heart. So that's a very important point. We sing this Gurvashtakam prayers every morning in ISKCON, every temple, every morning, because it's so fundamental. We will go to Krishna. We are able to approach Krishna only through the access of the spiritual master. Now, this next section, when I was doing my research and I came upon this, I said to myself, this is a very nice sequence. This is in the 10th canto, the Krishna Leela. And the incident is when Sudama, the poor Brahmana, was sent by his wife to go see his classmate, Krishna. Sudama and Krishna were classmates in the school of Sandipani Muni, and we'll hear about that. So that exchange, that whole 2 chapters of Sudama Brahman, such a nice part of the 10th canto. So here's how it is delivered. Shukadeva Goswami, of course, is explaining 10th canto to Parikshit Maharaj. He says, O king, taking each other's hands, Krishna and Sudama talked pleasantly about how they once lived together in the school of their guru. Krishna then said, my dear friend Sudama, one who gives a person the physical birth is one's first spiritual master. So this is very important. One's father is the first spiritual master. And one who initiates him as a twice-born Brahmana and engages him in religious duties is indeed more directly the spiritual master. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all the spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. Same thing I was just saying. Same thing that is stated in that Gurvashtakam prayers. Listen to what Krishna says. The person who bestows transcendental knowledge is one's ultimate spiritual master and is as good as my own self. This has to be taken very, very carefully. O Brahmana Sudama, certainly of all the followers of the Varna Ashram system, those who take advantage of the words I speak in my form as the spiritual master, and thus easily cross over the ocean of material existence, they best understand their own true welfare. For I, Krishna, am the soul of all beings, and I am not as satisfied by ritual worship, Brahminical initiation, penances, or self-discipline. I am not as satisfied as I am by faithful service rendered to one's spiritual master. That is the same thing spoken of in that final Gurvashtakam prayers. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada, yasya prasada nagati kutopi. So that song is exactly what Krishna is saying here. We are not so much concerned with trying to satisfy Krishna directly. We are more concerned with satisfying the instructions of the spiritual master. Indeed, the entire ISKCON movement is based on that principle. And as long as ISKCON continues to follow that principle, it will flourish and be successful. But as soon as it deviates, then it is finished. So this point here that Krishna is saying, I'm not as pleased as I am by faithful service rendered to one's spiritual master. And I will go one step further. Prabhupada directly writes in his book, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it occurs when that famous verse appears, that the mother of all regulations, rules, is that one must always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That's the mother of all principles. Always remember Krishna, never forget. And in the purport, Prabhupada says that the spiritual master gives many services. But the first instruction is to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It is written in Prabhupada's book. It is the law. One must chant 16 rounds. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then one knows Krishna is satisfied. Krishna continues, O Brahmana, do you remember what happened to us while we were living with our spiritual master? Once, the wife of our guru sent us out to fetch firewood, and after we entered the vast forest, an unseasonal storm arose with fierce wind, rain, and harsh thunder. Then, as the sun set, the forest was covered by darkness in every direction, and with all the flooding, we could not distinguish high land from low. Constantly besieged by the powerful wind and rain, we lost our way amidst the flooding waters. So we simply held each other's hands, and in great distress, wandered aimlessly about the forest. Our Guru, Sandipani Muni, understanding our predicament, after sunrise set out to search for us and found us in distress. At that time, Sandipani Muni said, "O my children, you have suffered so much for my sake. After all, the body is most dear to every living creature. But you are so dedicated to me that you completely disregarded your own comfort. This indeed is the duty of all true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. You boys are first-class brahmanas, and I am satisfied with you. May all your desires be fulfilled, and may the Vedic mantras you have learned never lose their meaning for you in this world or in the next." Lord Krishna continued, "My dear Sudama, we had many similar experiences while living in our spiritual master's home. Simply by the grace of the spiritual master, a person can fulfill the purpose of life and attain eternal peace." So, we are learning from Krishna how significant, how fundamental it is to simply obey and serve the spiritual master. For my next excerpt, we go to the prayers of the personified Vedas. And they pray like this to Vishnu. The mind is like an impetuous horse that even persons who have regulated their senses and breath cannot control. Those in this world who try to tame the uncontrolled mind, but who abandon the feet of their spiritual master, encounter hundreds of obstacles in their cultivation of various distressful practices. O unborn Lord, they are like merchants on a boat in the ocean who have failed to employ a helmsman. So the spiritual master is the captain of the ship. And therefore our duty, our business is to strictly obey the spiritual master. Basically, all Srila Prabhupada wants us to do is to love Krishna. I directly asked Srila Prabhupada in 1975 in Atlanta. I asked Prabhupada, "Prabhupada, what pleases you the most?" And Prabhupada replied, "When you love Krishna." So, how to love Krishna? That is the question. And the way to love Krishna is given by the spiritual master. Chant Hare Krishna and preach the message of Krishna. That is how you will develop your dormant love of Krishna. Simply chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then try to preach the message of Krishna. This was the same thing Lord Chaitanya told the Kurma Brahmana. The Kurma Brahmana asked Lord Chaitanya, "I want to leave my household life. I want to go with you." And Lord Chaitanya said, "No, you stay home and you become guru." How? By simply repeating what Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita, and what has been said about Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna Katha. If we simply speak Krishna Katha, then we are satisfying Krishna and we are developing love of Krishna. Now, the next set of instructions is from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This next verse is a very prominent verse from the 11th canto. Bhayang vatiya viniveshata syad ishad apetasya viparyayo smriti tanmaya yato buddha abaje tang bhatyaika yeshang guru deva tatma. This section is from Maharaj Nimi when he is met with the Navayogendras, the 9 transcendental preacher sons of Rishabhadev. And he asked them questions, and each one took a turn answering the questions of Maharaj Nimi. So this was Kavi, and Kavi says, when does fear arise? Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies oneself as the material body. Why? Because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, one also forgets his or her own constitutional position as servant of the Lord. I cannot emphasize that enough. Our constitutional position is to be the servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is effected by the potency of illusion called Maya. This fearful condition is effected by the potency for illusion known as Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom one should accept as worshipable deity and one's very life and soul. Then, in the same conversation, another famous verse, Tasmad Gurung Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Parecha Nishnatang Brahmani Upashamasrayam. This was one of his brothers, Prabhuda. So he said to Maharaj Nimi, therefore, any person who seriously desires real happiness must seek out a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of the bona fide guru is that he has realized the conclusions of the scriptures by deliberation and is able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Godhead, Krishna, leaving aside all material considerations, should be understood to be bona fide spiritual masters. Then, in this same section, it is stated here, accepting the bona fide spiritual master as one's life and soul and worshipable deity, the disciple should learn from the spiritual master the process of pure devotional service. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the soul of all souls, is inclined to give himself to his pure devotees. Therefore, the disciple should learn from the spiritual master how to serve the Lord without duplicity and in such a faithful and favorable way that the Supreme Lord, thus being satisfied, will offer himself to the faithful disciple. This is completely amazing. Krishna is going to offer himself to you when you are strictly obedient and faithful to the spiritual master. Please think about that. Krishna is going to offer himself to you simply by you serving your spiritual master. Continuing from the Navayogendras, a sincere disciple should learn to disassociate the mind from everything material and positively cultivate association with one's spiritual master and other saintly devotees. One should be merciful to those in an inferior position, cultivate friendship with those on an equal level, and meekly serve those in a higher spiritual position. Thus, one should learn to deal properly with all living beings. In the same section of the instructions of the Navayogendras, Avirhotra replied to Maharaj Nimi, having obtained the mercy of one spiritual master who reveals to the disciple the injunctions of the Vedic scriptures, the devotee should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the particular personal form of the Lord the devotee finds most attractive. This I like very, very much. This I really like. I have also read in Prabhupada's writings in the Bhagavatam. How can you tell what is your original rasa with Krishna? Prabhupada gives the hint that if you find a particular avatar, if you find a particular pastime, if you find something that you are very, very much attached to, that gives you a clue as to your original spiritual position. So, may you find out what that is, and may you become all successful in achieving your original spiritual status of servant of Krishna. Now, finishing up my homework that I did here, the remainder is from the Uddhava Gita. The Uddhava Gita is just before Krishna leaving this planet, before the Maushala Leela, or the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. The scene was that Krishna was in Dwaraka, and Lord Brahma and the demigods arrived in Dwaraka. And Lord Brahma situated himself in the sky and said to Krishna, "My dear Lord, you have remained on this earth for 125 autumns. And you came at our request because we asked you to remove the burden of this earth. That has been done. You have killed all the demons. And the last batch was the battle of Kurukshetra. So we asked you to come and kill all the demons. You did that. So Lord Brahma told Krishna, now you can return to your abode." And so Uddhava was there at that time. And so after this incident, Uddhava approached Krishna and said, "My Lord, I cannot stay if you leave, I must go with you. I cannot stay here. But Krishna said, no, Uddhava. I have some service for you to do after I leave this planet. So for some time you will have to remain in order to do that service. Then, when Kali Yuga begins, then you can return. So Uddhava then said, then my Lord, you must instruct me so that I will be prepared. I will be fully fit to live without your direct association. So that's the Uddhava Gita. Uddhava asks Krishna so many questions, and Krishna responds. So within that section, there are many, many chapters. Many chapters. One of those here, Krishna says, one who has accepted me as the supreme goal of life should strictly observe the scriptural injunctions forbidding sinful activities, and as far as possible should execute the injunctions prescribing minor regulative duties such as cleanliness. Ultimately, however, one should approach a bona fide spiritual master who is full in knowledge of me as I am, who is peaceful, and who by spiritual elevation is not different from me. Krishna continues elsewhere in the Uddhava Gita. The spiritual master can be compared to the lower kindling stick, the disciple to the upper kindling stick, and the instruction given by the guru to be the third stick placed in between. Transcendental knowledge communicated from transcendental knowledge communicated from guru to disciple is compared to the fire arising from the contact of these, which burns the darkness of ignorance to ashes, bringing great happiness both to guru and disciple. Krishna also says in the Uddhava Gita, by submissively hearing from an expert spiritual master, the expert disciple develops pure knowledge, which repels the onslaught of material illusion arising from the three modes of material nature. And finally, this pure knowledge itself ceases, just as fire ceases when the stock of fuel has been consumed. And so, my dear Uddhava, I have thus explained to you perfect knowledge. However, there are philosophers who challenge my conclusion, for they say that the natural position of the living entity is to engage in fruitive activities, and they see the living entity as the enjoyer of the happiness and distress that accrue from one's own work. According to this materialistic philosophy, the world, time, the revealed scriptures, and even the self are all variegated and eternal, existing as a perpetual flow of transformations. Moreover, knowledge cannot be one or eternal, because it arises from different and changing forms of objects. Thus, knowledge itself is always subject to change. But even if you accept such a nonsense philosophy, my dear Uddhava, still there will be perpetual birth, death, old age, and disease, since all living entities must accept a material body subject to the influence of time. Now comes a very, very powerful verse, also in this Uddhava Gita. Prabhupada refers to this verse several times throughout his books, because Krishna gives a very nice analogy. Nritdeham adyang sulabang sudulabang plavang sukalpang gudukarna daram mayanukulena nabasvattaritam pumang bavabding natare sa atmaha. Oh, my dear Uddhava, the human body, which can award all benefit in life, is automatically obtained by the laws of nature, although it is a very rare achievement. This human body can be compared to a perfectly constructed boat, having the spiritual master as the captain and the instructions of the personality of Godhead as favorable winds impelling it on its course. Considering all these advantages, a human being who does not utilize his or her human life to cross the ocean of material existence must be considered the killer of one's own soul. So it said here, Atma Ha, the killer of the soul. Now someone may be thinking, Prabhu, Bhagavad Gita teaches that the soul cannot be killed. So why here is Krishna saying that one is to be considered the killer of the soul? So the answer is that if one does not take advantage of this human form of life, and as it says here, it's a boat. The human body is a boat. The spiritual master is the captain. And the instructions of Krishna are the winds. If one does not take advantage of it, then how is one the killer of the soul? Because that means one has spoiled the opportunity of human life. And instead of being elevated, one becomes degraded. And it will take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of births in order to once again come back to the human form. Krishna admitted in this verse, the human body is automatically achieved, but that's after a long cycle of rotation. So, one has to take this human form of life very, very seriously, because having this human form of life means heavy responsibilities. Just like you get married, you raise a family, that's a lot of responsibility. Lots of responsibility. So in the same way, having this human form of life is a responsibility. We are supposed to use this human form of life in order to achieve perfection. And this whole class today has been giving us how to achieve perfection. It has been made so simple. Accept the spiritual master as the external manifestation of Krishna in the heart and follow his instructions. And Srila Prabhupada has emphasized, what are those instructions? What are the basic instructions? Chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, follow the four regulative principles, and preach Krishna consciousness. I want to sing for Madan's brother, that he gets more opportunity in this human form of life to achieve perfection. Hari Haraye Namaha, Hari Haraye Namaha, Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana. Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Rama Shri Madhusudana. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. So, my dear Balaram Dasa, do you have any questions? Do you have anything you want to say, since you were the devotee instrumental to bringing me today, Balaram Dasa? Do you have anything?
Thank you for giving your talk. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
So you liked it?
Yeah. Too bad we can't
Good.
meet.
I can't hear you.
I said, too bad we can't meet in person at this point.
Yes, I miss you and all the devotees, and of course your beautiful deities. I miss them like anything. And I see my good friend is sitting behind you.
Yes.
Hari Bol. Balaram, you look good. It looks like you're okay.
Thank you.
Any Madan, you have any question, Madan?
No, thank you for doing the prayers for my brother.
Jai.
And with your prayers and everybody's prayers, he should be home soon.
Good.
And everybody in the family will be happy to, I'm going to let them know today that we got extra prayer for him.
Good.
So,
Very good.
and it's good to see everybody, dedicated Krishna devotees.
Yes, the SanDiego temple is one of my favorite temples. So you should come sometime after COVID is gone.
Yeah, after everything is down, then we can come down.
Yes, it is a beautiful temple. And this devotee, Balaram,
Yes.
he is my life and soul. He's a pure devotee. So humble and pure. I love him. He's like my son. Tapas, you have anything you want to say? Tapas Maharaj.
I just beg your forgiveness if I make any mistakes.
Are you kidding? No. This was perfect. What did Trump say? Perfect call. Perfect.
Excellent.
Yes. Okay, if there's no more questions, then why don't we sing the Shringa prayers? How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste
Pralada Lada Dayane Hiranya Kashipur Bhakshaha Shilatanga Nakalai Ito Nrsinga Panato Nrsingo Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsinga Bahir Nrsinga Kridaye Nrsingo Nrsingham Adim Sharanam Prapadye Tavakara Kamala Parei Nakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Ringam Keshavadrita Narahatrupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadish Jaya Jagadish Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. So, Balaram ji, how many people are on Facebook Live?
I think Tapas will have a better idea. Yeah.
Tapas, how many people were viewing on Facebook?
We're on the YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, whatever you're doing.
15 people has viewed, but not
How many? 60?
15.
At one point.
No,
That's
right?
pretty good.
People watching.
Anyway, for those who are still there, oh, you can't see this. Anyway, please visit my website, Nirantara.com. There you will find other lectures and videos, music, and if you are so inclined, you can give a donation via PayPal, because here I am all alone. So please protect me. Please help me. May Krishna bless you, protect you, and Balaram, whenever you want, I am available. Whenever you want. I love doing these Zoom classes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. May Krishna bless you, protect you, and maintain you. ISKCON SanDiego ki. I am now closing out this transcendental session. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna to all.
Hare Krishna.